Welcome to Ladies in Law, where real-world advice meets professional wisdom and empowerment in realms of law and business. Your hosts, Lisa Goucher, Dawn Smith, and Kellye Raymond, bring you innovative strategies, practical guidance, and inspirational stories. Join us as we inspire and support women to thrive in traditionally male-dominated fields. We're here to promote inclusivity and provide practical advice for success. Welcome back. Lisa here with Kellye and Dawn. Today's topic is one that's Dawn is very passionate about. It's collaboration, women in law, diversity, and the reason why all of those things need to be discussed collectively. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, let her lead us off.
So we really wanted to talk about the importance of really having different viewpoints in your business, in your law firm, especially in the legal industry, trial lawyers especially. Women are really underrepresented. Minorities are really underrepresented. And if, like for the first time this year, there are more female associates than male associates that are starting out of law school as first years.
Ever? Is that
Ever. And it's by like 2.2 percentage points, so very little, even though female law students have been more than 50% since 1991. So we're making strides, but slowly, and really we need more women in leadership roles, more minorities in leadership roles, because you need different perspectives to do your best for your clients. So, I mean, I was just talking to somebody at a conference, and she does trucking law. And even though she's, really worked her way up through AAJ, she's been super involved. She's probably one of the most knowledgeable truck lawyers in the country. She really still battles to get those high-level trucking cases because it's the partners, it's the people that are at the highest level that are referring those cases, right? So you have to have a diverse leadership across all of the firms before there's going to be more equality. So I was wondering if you guys have experienced, either you, especially working, I'm sure you work with a lot more male trial lawyers than females, and if you've had a situation to where you've really been able to interact with a group that is diverse during either a focus group or even in trial when you're picking a jury, and how that has impacted you or what you've seen.
Yeah, lots to unpack there for sure. Well, I think the first thing is that collaborating makes you a better person, right? I mean, psychologically, people like themselves, and certainly kind of in society where we are, politics, there's a lot of divide. And so I think it's easy for folks to put themselves into their little echo chamber and not want to step outside the box. I think the fact that there aren't that many women or minorities in leadership roles, it's hard to, break through that barrier. But what I think a lot of times that women do is they think, well, I can't get a seat at the table, and so I'm going to make my own table. That's great, but at the same time, you are now kind of excluding yourself from working with people that are different from you, right? I'm much more a fan of this idea of like bully up to the table, spread your elbows, and make a seat, as opposed to just taking your toys and going to another sandbox, right? Collaborating, juries do it all the time, right? These are folks from all different walks of life. I'm fortunate enough to do hundreds of focus groups a year, and whatever venue the case is in, we are drawing mock jurors that look like the real jury pool. And so those folks all come from different walks of life. And so I think exposing yourself to people that don't look like you, that aren't from the same background as you, that have different ideas and different life experiences, just helps you learn and grow in your own lane, whatever that is, by exposing yourself to people that don't look or think like you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like the next level of success. It makes you more well-rounded. It just gives you the ability to be more innovative when you're inclusive of diversity and individuals, men and women, minority, and you bring them all in together, like you're going to find the trailblazers. And then you may find out that you're the trailblazer by doing that. The staff that you have at your office, like, I love it. I love that you find people off of Indeed, that you just, saw something in that resume that was so interesting that you brought them in to bring out that creative spirit and that talent. Like, that's a wonderful characteristic. I am fortunate enough that one of my really large clients, she is a trailblazer in the asbestos and talc industry. And she has been. She was at a firm and then she started her own firm, and it's grown successfully. But it's been so fun. And I'm hopeful to get her on for an interview at some point here, because she just has so much to offer. She's done incredible things in jurisdictions all across the United States where even men could not make things happen.
Who is it?
And
give her a shout out.
I'm not going to give her the shout out yet, because I'm going to see if I can get her on as an interview. But it's just, when you are side by side, like, I feel like I'm part of her team. Because especially when we were going through the pandemic and everybody got shut down, and the asbestos and talc litigation, they were one of the first to say, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to stay shut down. We're going to proceed in a virtual environment. We're going to make this happen. We're going to take expert depositions. We're going to be able to show the exhibits. Everybody's remote.
They did trials.
They did trials. They did depots. They did the whole 9 yards. And that required collaboration in order to make sure that it all went off smoothly, with, communicating with the offices and the attorneys that wanted to do that. So, I'm passionate about that component of diversity, and because I love the creativity that it brings about when you have diversity in an environment.
It kind of gets your own juices flowing when you are talking to somebody, and it's there's no nuance, I don't think, behind collaborating, right? It's just talking to somebody, asking them questions, and by asking questions, you can learn somebody, maybe they grew up differently, but maybe you share a hobby, or, they work in a different field of law, right? You're a court reporter. I'm a jury consultant. Our clients are the same. Knowing you, or knowing AV staff, or knowing other folks that help the lawyers that I help, all of it's important, because at the end of the day, it's about putting the case together, right? Getting your case ready for the jury, or for whatever stage in litigation that you're in. I think you only make yourself better by talking to people that don't look like you, that don't think like you, that kind of challenge you a little bit.
Yeah, but I want to know, how do we get to the point where we have women that are moving from associates to leaders in their own firms? The ABA just came out with an article, and the 200 top firms, right? The largest, so these are mainly defense firms, right? The 200 largest law firms in the United States, only 76 of them have women at the partnership level, what do we have to do? Like, what can we do to encourage women, especially, to stay and grow, and kind of, like you said, I love that, like, scoot your elbows out, scoot your way up to the table. What can we do as leaders to encourage that?
That is a really good question.
That's a question of the hour.
It's like,
and there was like deafening silence.
Leaves me speechless.
It's not an easy solution to solve, right? I think it's so much easier to say, well, just go bully yourself up to whoever that you're talking to, or whoever the leader is that you want to join. But I think it starts at a baseline level of just pushing yourself outside of your own comfort zone to talk to people, right?
So, perfect example, like, there are certain conferences that, AAJ is doing a lot better. Like, I think at this last national conference, they had something like 40% were female speakers, female, I think, and minority speakers, which that was the most ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think AAJ is doing well, but I walked up to somebody, and one of the ladies that I was with, she was dialed into one of the organizations. I'm not going to call them out, but dialed into one of the organizations that, has a lot of conferences, that needs a lot of speakers. And she introduced me, and, there was just total pushback from this male attorney that was on the committee to select people to be on the speaking panels. It was like, it was like I wasn't even there. Didn't even take the time of day to see if I knew anything. Maybe I didn't, maybe I wasn't qualified to speak at that point. But I feel like you've got to build a base through other women that are like-minded. You have to build that.
And don't you
community.
think so much of that is just putting yourself in front of people and making sure that you're talking to people? I can imagine that. I remember when that scenario happened, and
Oh, right, you were there.
Yes, I remember that. And so, but I just remember thinking, you've just got to keep shaking hands, right? And you've just got to keep introducing yourself to people, talking to people. I think the very first time that I was asked to speak, not to fill in for somebody because that was the first time I actually spoke at a conference, but the first time that I was asked to speak at a conference, it was because I had just marched right up to the person that was running it the year before, and I just started talking to them. And I think that's
male or female?
I think it was a female.
Okay.
I think it was a female, but I think what helped me is just to get out and just talk to people. Because if somebody doesn't know you, the best way for them to get to know you is to truly get to know you, right? Asking questions, figuring out what you have in common with somebody, or what you don't, and seeing how you connect with them even without maybe like a more traditional commonality.
Just building community. Building community is probably the most important thing.
That's the first step. And I think it's a little bit controversial, like this idea of, for example, any lawyer is on tons of different listservs, right? And you can, for anybody that doesn't know what a listserv is, you can kind of post an idea and get whoever's on that listserv gets an email and they can post back. This idea that there are like separate women listservs, I think is almost a disservice to women, because you're asking for advice on a particular topic and you're not getting advice from a huge cross section of professionals. And I just don't understand why. I feel like it's limiting us sometimes by saying, okay, if I can't get a seat at the table, I'm going to make my own. I feel like that limits you.
So let me tell you, I used to be totally your perspective, 100%. I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. Why do we have just female groups as opposed to everybody coming together? That has changed for me. I would just say probably within the last 3 or 4 years, since I've, have really kind of niched down into a certain area, really tried to kind of develop this practice area and getting to know people in this particular, in elder abuse law. And I think that women's groups are really important, really important. I just went to a conference that was a women's conference, and I just met, I don't know, I just met some amazing women that I probably wouldn't have met if I went to a conference where there was men. There was so much more camaraderie, so much sharing, so much openness as opposed to a conference with men. And I don't know, that's the first conference I've ever been to that was all women. And I don't know what that was. I don't know why it was like that, but it was a light bulb for me. The generosity of these women in sharing what they know, in sharing how they have built what they have. I don't know if you can get that atmosphere when there's men around, and I don't know why.
I don't think some of them are going to feel comfortable enough in that environment to voice a concern or a question. And so the need to have your own group with just women, I think that's what opens it up. And I think, as they go and they grow, like you're totally fine in an environment, whether it's all women or women and men. But we saw that from the previous one of the podcasts with the imposter syndrome. You don't have it. Like, you're showing up and you're going to be there and you're going to ask your questions and you're going to go straight forward and talk to whoever you need to talk to. But that's not the case among, I think, the women in general in that setting.
I just think like other conferences, and I know you've been to a ton, but like there's just so much especially with trial lawyer conferences, there's just so much ego and so much like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, Maybe I'm getting a little bit jaded in my 50s. Yes, I'm in my 50s. I feel like there's something to be said for having a group that has shared interests. And maybe that's not just an all women's group. Maybe you have a diverse set of perspectives, right? You are, I don't know, you love Taylor Swift. You're a Swiftie. There's male and female Swifties out there. So, maybe you're a Swiftie. And there's something to be said for being passionate about a certain thing. And I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be based on gender.
Well, I think that's important because I get that, like your example of being at an all women's conference, and how you might feel more comfortable sharing certain things or asking certain questions, if it's a smaller group or if it's just women or just whatever group you belong to. But I think that it could be limiting in a way because then you're not getting the feedback from people who I think you want to get feedback from, right?
I agree. I mean, there's a fine line. There is absolutely a fine line, but I mean, there are certain men that are, I mean, I have male mentors, right? People that I value and trust that I always have, but I wouldn't say that all men are like that. You know what I mean? I mean, all women aren't like that either.
Sure. Well, I think, it definitely goes both ways. I think sometimes women aren't necessarily, just because you're a woman doesn't make you inclusive. It doesn't make you friendly necessarily.
Well, I think they're meaner at conferences where there's men. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, that's interesting.
So like the attitude that women generally have, and I know that this is, I don't know, I'm including a lot of people.
Broad sweeping stereotypes.
It's very broad sweeping stereotype. But I will say that I think that women are kind of bitchy at conferences where men are.
You think women are less bitchy at conferences where there are men as opposed to no men?
Absolutely. Well,
I don't think we can blame the men for that, though.
Let me just say. So I've only been to one all women's conference. So maybe that was, maybe that was just, I don't know, something very
on the beach,
unique,
vacation.
Something like that. That could have been the atmosphere.
The margaritas.
But I will say my experience across the board going to conferences for many, many years, I would say women are generally kind of snipey at those conferences. I think
we need to do some empirical data here and figure out what is the issue there, right? But my thing is, I don't want to be known as a good female jury consultant.
Right.
I don't want to be known as a good female whatever. I don't want that to be my defining trait.
I'm telling you, I felt that way. I felt that way for a long, long time. I really did.
That's so interesting that it's shifting now, because I would have thought it was much harder kind of back in the day. And Lisa, you've got experience, working asbestos litigation in the early 90s, 2000s. I mean, back in the day, it was definitely more of a boys' club, and they said the things you weren't supposed to say or were not allowed to say now.
Yeah, they behaved badly and nothing was said, but the environment itself, like, I still flourished.
Because you collaborated.
Yeah, still, communication. I mean, really, to me, collaboration is communication. So, taking that step forward to talk to that person, the male, the female. I do remember back in the 90s, the female attorneys, there weren't very many of them, especially in the asbestos litigation, but it was growing.
I got trampled when I first started practicing with women that were older, like women that were my age when I was just coming up. Ooh, they were mean. I mean, really way more mean.
I think that it's, and again, broad sweeping generalization, but I would have to imagine that women in the 80s, early 90s had to work so hard to get where they are, that if there's a new female coming around, they're like, listen, I've already put in the work and time, as opposed to building more inclusivity, they were a little bit meaner.
I mean, I only met, and I still stay in touch with one of the lawyers that I worked with on one of my very first cases, because she was amazing. She knew her stuff. She was brilliant. She didn't have that ego. Like, she didn't have to like prove herself to anybody, including certainly me, right? She was just herself. She was doing her job. She was doing right by her client. And I I always remember that. I always remember that in relation to some of the other women that I dealt with that were just so mean, because they did. Because coming up in the 80s and 90s, they really had it hard, and they're like, we're going to do it like this. I just am so opposed to that. I mean, I am so opposed to that. I think that is one of the problems about making sure that we're building women up so that they can advance, so they can move forward in their firms, so they can be leaders in their firm and owners and partners in their firms. I mean, we're here to help. I mean, at least that's how I feel.
Well, I think that's kind of the most important thing to remember, is that somebody has been where you are before, and they very likely had to work really hard to get there. And so keeping in mind that if you're at the top or you're working your way to the top, I think competition happens at the bottom, collaboration happens at the top. And so always being mindful about, is there something that you can do to kind of bring somebody along? Is there a way to make yourself more available to help somebody? Because I think it all comes back around, right? At some point.
So is that answering the question, like, how do we encourage women to stay in this profession and move up those chains, move up that ladder? We need to take accountability for the positions that we have, where we are, who are the people around us that are possibly looking up to us and using us as an example, and what can we do to encourage them, to let them know they're doing a good job? I mean, isn't that one of the most important things that we can do as owners of our companies?
Yes, as an example, be that person.
Well, you can only control your own behavior, right? You can't march into, these national associations and say, this is what needs to be done. You can only control your own behavior. And I think, can you help somebody else? Can you be a role model? Can you reach out and see if somebody needs something? I think it starts with you, right?
And you have to collaborate.
Yeah.
Right. You have to collaborate and build that group so that you have more clout, so that you have more power. Because really, it's about power. It's about who are the people that are making these decisions? Who are the people that are at the top that are, choosing your destiny? Are you going to get this, $20 million case, or is he going to get this $20 million case? How do you get to the point to where you have built a large enough group to where you can have that power?
I think it has to start with not being afraid to reach out and say, hey, so-and-so, maybe somebody that is somebody that you compete with for cases, and say, hey, let's go have a drink. Let's work together. Let's see. Again, I think finding a commonality with somebody, if somebody likes you, they're going to want to work with you, right?
That's true.
That's just kind of how it goes. And so I think finding a way to just connect with somebody on a human level will ultimately lead to a business collaboration.
Yeah, most definitely. A real relationship that you're building. And then you said clout. Like, I think that's really important. You're building clout so that you have the opportunity to have that power, to create that group, and to get into a position to bring others up, bring other women up, encourage them to stay in.
I mean, you have to. I mean, I just think it's a responsibility.
It is. I agree.
Yeah, there are definitely not enough female trial lawyers, right? I don't think there are. But I think this topic is a tough one, and I think we are just scratching the surface of trying to figure out how to make it better, because I think there are a lot of things that people can do, and I think it's just tough to try to boil it down in 30 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, key takeaways, right? So don't be afraid to build your network. Build your network with the people that are close to you, and see if you can get to know people that know them. Go to these conventions, the ones with the men and the ones with the women. Go to those conventions, and when you're there, actually get out and talk to people. Just make conversation with people and get to know them on a human level, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. Get to know somebody on a human level, and just be kind, I would say, and be yourself, because you're not there to do anything other than build relationships so that you can make a difference at some point. It's all about connections. I mean, that's how I met you. that's how I met you.
Yes.
That's why we're here today, and we've known each other for like 10 years,
Right.
more.
Well,
than
I
you.
think a really important component to that is busting your ass and doing the hard work so that you are known by your reputation and that it's a good reputation and you are known as a straight shooter and a hard worker, and that people know that if they call on you, they're going to get a certain level of work product. I think once your reputation starts to speak for itself,
It gets around.
Exactly.
It does.
And then the collaboration happens way more naturally than, you just forcing yourself to a conference and trying to shake every hand you can. I think it definitely starts there.
Yeah, you got to have work ethic.
Right.
Yeah. Got to have that work ethic. All right. Well,
Tough topic. I think we'll revisit this one for sure.
yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining in. If you have any input regarding anything that we said in this semi-controversial topic, please comment below. Let us know. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Ladies in Law. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to shake things up in law and business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know what you think. Spread the word and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on socials for all the behind-the-scenes fun and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Until next time, keep rocking it, keep breaking the mold, and as always, keep aspiring to inspire.